from the military. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, to talk about military doctrine, military history, the practices of great military leaders, and translate that into how we can improve the performance of our businesses and our professions. So today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I mentioned. I was on another show last week with Vanessa Donaldson, and we were talking about the challenges of transitioning from military life to civilian life. And one of the issues we discussed is how much more chaotic civilian life is than military life. So I think most people who haven't been in the military picture the typical soldier, Marine, sailor, airman in this combat environment. Bombs are exploding, hand grenades are flying all over the place. Couldn't be farther from the truth. The reality is that probably no more than 10% of service members ever engage in kinetic combat, where there's actual, ordnance being dropped, or there's, bullets flying, that kind of thing. The other 90% of us, including me, we're there to support the military structure and to support the various combat elements so that they can be effective. And so while the battle environment, the battle space, is of course tremendously chaotic, that is not the typical experience of service members. While most of us stay either in garrison, meaning on a base, or even when we're forward deployed, we're still probably in a base of some kind, perhaps in a FOB, a forward operating base. But that doesn't mean that, we're actively engaged in combat. Okay, so our lives are heavily regimented and very predictable compared to civilian life. So, and one of the most predictable aspects of military life is our career progression. So when someone enters the military, from that first day, they know what their career progression is going to look like. It's set out very specifically, and they may not know exactly what they need to do from day one to go step by step through their progression, but they quickly learn what it takes. Okay, so I've talked about a little part of this aspect once before, but I'm gonna share my screen because I want to show you a graphic. Here we go. Okay, so this is a graphic that shows what are called the rates, or used to be. I mean, you'll typically hear them called ranks nowadays, but these are actually rates, the enlisted rates, and the officer ranks. Okay, so there's actually sort of three categories. So let's look first of all at the enlisted rates, you see here it says military occupational specialty. That's not really the case. These are everybody calls these ranks, even though, like I said, technically these are called rates. All right, so when you first enter the military as an enlisted person, you start at the E1 level. Okay, and you can see here that in the Army and Marine Corps that you're a private, in the Navy and the Coast Guard you're a seaman recruit, And in the Air Force, you're an Airman Basic. And in Space Force, this is new. The Space Force didn't exist when I was in the military. Specialist 1. Okay. And then from there, you advance to E2, Private, in the Marine Corps PFC, Seaman Apprentice, Airman Specialist 2. Okay. And then from there, you go to an E3. Okay. In the Army, that's a private first class. In the Marine Corps, it's a Lance Corporal. And the Navy and the Coast Guard, it's a Seaman, Airman first class. And okay, so this level right here, E1 through E3, these are the sort of basic personnel in the military at the enlisted level. Okay, the next level right here, E4 and E5. Okay, and in this case, in the Army, it's a corporal or a specialist, and in the Marine Corps, it's a corporal as well. In the Navy and the Coast Guard, it's a petty officer, third class. In the Air Force, it's an senior airman. Okay, at this level, you're now what's called an NCO, a non-commissioned officer. And that's true of the E5 level as well. You're a non-commissioned officer. So sergeant, in the case of in the Air Force, a staff sergeant, and then a petty officer second class. Now, at the E6 level, okay, you're what's called an SNCO, a senior non-commissioned officer. Okay, staff sergeant, okay, petty officer. And so there is a little bit of a difference here. So the Navy and the Coast Guard really consider a petty officer first class as being an NCO, not a senior NCO. Okay, but the rest of the branches consider E6 to be a senior non-commissioned officer. Okay, and then when you get to E7, so a sergeant first class, gunnery sergeant, chief petty officer. Okay, you're now in a master sergeant or first sergeant. Now you're definitely in the senior non-commissioned officer ranks. And that's for all the rest of the so for the E7, E8, and E9, those are all senior non-commissioned officer rates or ranks. Okay, now by the name non-commissioned officer, they're telling you that historically these leaders did not have what's called a commission. So in the old days, the difference between someone who enlisted and someone who was an officer was when you're an officer, you have what's called a commission. It's a document signed by the sovereign, or in the case of the United States, signed by the president, Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of the Navy, depending on what branch you're in. I should say Secretary of the Army, Army Chief of Staff, Commandant on the Marine Corps. Oh gosh, I'm really messing up here. Sorry. Yeah, Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Air Force, etc. Okay, so your commission would be signed by that person, and that's different than enlisting, because when you enlist for a specific length of time that you can re-enlist periodically. When you are a commissioned officer, okay, you're in until you resign. Okay, so an enlisted person, they periodically renew what's called a contract. Okay, an officer, they're in until they choose to leave. Now, usually there's a minimum service requirement, but once their minimum service requirement is done, then they can submit their resignation, and the military will let them go. Now, there is this middle group called warrant officers. The difference between a warrant officer and a commissioned officer used to be that a warrant officer got what was called a warrant, which was a different type of document than a commission. These days, they actually work the same way. And the difference between a warrant officer and a commissioned officer is warrant officers specialize in certain areas of military service, and commissioned officers are more sort of general leadership. Okay, so that's a little bit of a repeat of what I talked about before. But what I want to focus on here is from day one, when you enlist, you know that your potential career path starts at E1. Okay, and sometimes you'll start, like if you were an Eagle Scout, I believe you start at E3 if you enlist. But in any event, wherever you start, you know what your career path looks like. It's going to go E3, E4, E5, E6, E7 through E9. You're not going to skip any of these. And in fact, time and grade, or the time you spend in a particular rate or rank, is especially in the beginning, is pretty much what it takes in order to advance. So to go from E1 to E3 is, I think it's around 3 months. To go from, I'm sorry, from E1 to E2, I think it's about 3 months. From E2 to E3 is, I think, about 6 months. Okay. And then from E3 to E4, I think is maybe 9 months or 12 months. I think it varies service by service. But in the beginning, you know you're going to advance in rate merely by being in the service for a certain period of time. Okay, so there's a level of certainty there that you don't have. I don't know of any civilian job where if you last, in your job for, say, a minimum of 6 months, you're automatically going to be promoted. That doesn't happen. Now, in the officer ranks, okay, if you start out as a second lieutenant or an ensign, okay, that's an O1, okay, it takes, I believe it's 3 years to go from O1 to O2. No, I take that back. It's I think it's 18 months to go from O1 to O2, and another 18 months to go from O2 to O3. Okay, so those are they're essentially automatic promotions. Okay, with time and grade, assuming that you don't commit the big stupid. Okay, then your first competitive promotion comes when you want to advance from O3 to O4, and then all of the advancements after that are competitive advancements all the way up to O6. Now, in theory, okay, and by the way, O1 through O3 are called junior officers, or JOs. Okay, O4s through O6 are generally considered senior officers. Sometimes you'll hear the term field grade. Majors and lieutenant colonels and colonels are field grade officers. Okay, and actually in the Navy, senior officers are only commanders and captains. Same with the Coast Guard. So there are differences between the service branches, but generally speaking, O1 through O3, junior officers, and then O4 through O6, senior officers, and then O7s through O10s, actually, okay, are what are known as flag or general officers. So flag officers actually really applies to all of these. General officers applies to the Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Space Force. They're general, meaning general officers. Okay. Now, theoretically, going from O6 to O7 is a competitive advancement, but it's also a political advancement. Okay. You don't get to be a flag or general officer just because you did a good job. You have to have done the politics of the military very well to get that star. Okay, especially your second, third, and fourth star. Okay, so and part of that is the skills that are necessary. Once you're a member of what I somewhat derisively call the Star Club, you're playing in the Pentagon and those areas. You're interacting a lot with senior civilian leadership, and so politics tends to impact virtually everything you do. All right, so When you first enter as an officer, you know you're going to start out as an O1, or in some cases an O2, or even an O3. Okay. But then from there, you know what your path is: O4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Okay. Although the reality is, if you make it to O6, you've had an amazing career. Okay. Because very few people are promoted beyond that. Okay. Now, not only do you know what the steps are and what they're called, but you also know, at least in general, what you have to do to advance. So while E1 to E3 is pretty much just time and grade, to become a corporal, you're going to have to, or a petty officer third class, you're going to have to demonstrate leadership ability. Now, not big leadership ability, but kind of small team leadership ability. Okay. And in fact, in the Marine Corps, you may even attend what's called the corporal's course. Okay. Which will teach you then the leadership that you need to know, not only to be a corporal, but also what you need to know to advance to the next level, which is sergeant. Okay. And in the Navy, we have what are called fitness reports. Okay. Fit reps for short. And in that fitness report, and actually, let's see. I'm going to see if I can bring up a fitness report form here. I should have done this before, but oops. Okay, yeah, great. So let's stop sharing and let's go. Where's my studio? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to share the fitness report form. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so this is the form that gets filled out every year that you're in the military. And so you know exactly how you're going to be rated in terms of your performance. Okay. And in fact, in many cases, you may be filling out part of this. Now, you're not going to fill out these things down here. Okay. But you're going to fill out a lot of this top stuff here. So your name, grade, E1, E3, not really, but like O1, O2, E5, E6, etc. Your designation is what do you specialize in? Your social security number, okay. Are you active or reserve component? Your UIC that relates to which command you're at. So UIC is the number, and then command is the specific command within the UIC. UIC is uniform something command, I think. Okay. Promotion status. Are you eligible for promotion? Are you in zone, meaning you're at the you're at the point that you're eligible to be promoted? Are you below zone, meaning it's not time for you to be promoted? Or are you above zone, meaning you're past the point when you should have been promoted, but you're still in and you just didn't get promoted? Now, there's lots of reasons why you can be what's called above zone, and that could relate to there just isn't a lot of opportunity for promotion. Okay. Or you could have changed communities, and so the number of years you have in service made you above zone automatically. You could have switched from the active to the reserves, and that could have changed that could change your promotion status from being below zone to above zone, or vice versa. Okay, date reported makes sense. Okay, and then you get reported periodically once a year, but also when you detach from a command. Okay, and then there's other special reasons. This is the period of the report. Now, there's something called a not observed report. If you've been at a command a very short time, they don't know you well enough to be able to really rate you. So you get what's called a non-observed report, which means there's less weight put on that in terms of your eligibility for promotion. Then you have what are called a regular report, which is just like it sounds. It's just in the regular course of your career. You have a concurrent report, meaning you're doing something other than your regular duty. So you're going to get a fitness report for your regular duty, but also for this special concurrent duty that you're doing. Okay. And then what's your physical readiness status? Okay. Who the reporting senior is, that's the person who's going to sign this report, their grade, their designator, their title, their UIC. Okay. Command employment and achievements. This is what you did at the command. Here's your primary and additional duties. Okay. And then you're supposed to be counseled, although usually a lot of times that you're supposed to be counseled, I think at the 6 months break, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. Okay. Now, here's what you're going to be rated on. Okay. Now, remember, we had this thing over here, not observed report. So if you haven't been at the command long enough for them to really know how well you're doing, so you get what's called an NOB, not observed, and they'll check off every single one of these NOB. Okay. But assuming you're getting a regular fitness report, so you're going to be rated on mission accomplishment, very low, low, average, high, very high. Okay. Operational professional competence, vision, strategic thinking, communication skills, fiscal planning, organizational skills, geopolitical fluency, military bearing, leadership judgment, leading change. Okay. Okay, and then they have potential traits. So this is a little bit different than what was used when I was in. So you see some of these repeated. Fiscal planning, organizational skills, personal growth, professional growth, potential leading change, strategic thinking. Okay, now, in the Navy, if you get anything below a 4, you're not going to get promoted. That's just how it works. And then there's been great inflation in the Navy. Okay, now, in the Marine Corps, interestingly enough, a 3 is considered good. Okay, it's really tough to get a 4 or a 5 in the Marine Corps. Okay, you really have to be above average. Okay, and so that's, you know, that's just a factor there. Okay, and then what you get after these numerical ratings, you get an average. Okay, and you get your individual average, and then you get the reporting seniors average. The goal is for your individual average to be higher than the reporting seniors average. Okay, because that means really the person who's signing this report is saying you're better than most of the people I work with or that work for me. Okay, and then you get recommendations for future assignments. Right, here's some things that I think this particular individual would be good at. Okay, and then next, here's where there's open-ended comments. So the intention here, and a lot of times in the military, at least in the Navy, you're asked to fill this out. What were the specific accomplishments you had? And you try and quantify them. Like one of mine was hired new personnel in 90 days, which is half to a third of the normal time it takes to hire personnel in the Navy, at least when I was in it. Right? That's an accomplishment. Like, how the heck did he do that? That's what people were asking. How did you get this done so fast? I said, well, I went and talked to the people who had to do stuff and asked them what I could do to make their job easier. That's exactly what they're like, why would you do that? I said, well, if I can make your job easier, I can get this done more quickly, and we really need to hire a new person. And so I figure the best thing I can do is help you out. They were so blown away by that concept that they're like, well, this is what I need to do. And I'm like, here, I'll tell you what, how about if I draft something up for you, and maybe that'll make it easier. And then, you can get this off your desk more quickly. Oh, sure. That's what I did. Bang, bang, bang. Then we did it. Okay. All right. And then it's signed and all that kind of stuff. So the point of this is, and I'm going to go, let's see, let's go back over here. Stop sharing. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm going to focus now just on the Navy because that's the branch that I know the best. Okay, and the Marine Corps, this is actually true for the Marine Corps as well. So when you get your fitness reports, okay, that's it. When you already know what what do I have to work on in order to get a good fitness report so I can move from being a corporal to a sergeant, or a petty officer third class to a petty officer second class, or for that matter, from an ensign to a lieutenant junior grade, JG, or a second to a first lieutenant. You already know the things you're going to be rated on, okay? And you can be talking to your reporting senior about being given the opportunity to do things that will rate you high. Okay, so let's say that you want to show you have good fiscal planning and organizational skills, because you're going to be rated on that. So you can talk to your supervisor. What is there a project that needs to be done where I can learn better fiscal planning and organizational skills? Is there a project I can do where I can lead change or show vision and strategic thinking, right? So how do we apply this then to the civilian world? Well, it's a one-to-one thing. If you have a fairly standardized fitness reporting form, okay, and you can call it evaluation. You don't have to call it a fitness report, whatever you want to call it, okay? And you have certain things that you want to see in your employees in order to help them grow your organization. Put them in here and show them, this is what I want to see you do. These are the kinds of things that you need to be concerned about to advance in this organization, okay? And then, so if you couple the clarity of showing them in advance, what are the important skills, traits that you need to exhibit in order to advance? Couple that with a clear path for advancement. Okay, here's what it is. Here's what the chart is. Okay, this is the personnel organizational chart. Couple those two things together, and you're giving your team the best information that you can and the best support you can in helping them develop their own careers and therefore benefit your organization. Okay, now from time to time, these things will change, and that's true in the military. Periodically, the Navy updates its fitness report form. It hasn't changed the levels in a long, long time. Those have been standard now for many decades. Although in World War II, there was no such thing as a senior chief petty officer or a master chief petty officer. Okay, you didn't have the E1 through E9 and O1 through O10, 11 system in World War II. That was a post World War II phenomenon. Nonetheless, it's been around for, I think, 50 or 60 years at this point. But it does change. Periodically, it does change. So you can set up the same kind of system in your organization, okay? And I mean, in many companies, these things do exist. They're just not put down with this kind of clarity, okay? And for younger people entering the workforce right these days, to have that kind of clarity for them is very important, okay? Because it shows them, what are the steps? And then what do I need to do in order to be able to advance those steps? Okay, so it's basically a one-to-one translation, if you will. All right, so that's the show for today. I hopefully you got some good information out of it, some good ideas. If you have any questions, there will be links to our social media in the show notes. So feel free to post a comment in the media or send me an email. Happy to answer your questions. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. My guest is Jock Payton, and he's going to be talking about special types of business financing. So I invite you to tune in for that. And then next week on Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific will be the next episode of Trusts and Estates Weekly. And then, of course, we're back a week from today for the next episode of Business Lessons from the Military. So thanks very much for tuning in today. I appreciate it. I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. And signing off as I always do, Marie, you're my pal. All the best, folks.